Clark Kent has overcome every trial and tribulation Warworld has put before him, and now that he has the fire of Ulgrim, will it be enough to defeat Mongul and save the planet? Well, let's hop into the pages of Superman, Warworld Apocalypse, issue number 1, the grand finale to the Warworld Saga, and find out. So then, as we join the story, we actually check back on in not with Superman, but with Midnighter and the rest of the new Authority team. They're fighting the good fight, trying to give Superman all the time that he might need to get to the center of Warworld. Granted, it's a real uphill battle as Mongul's generals are giving them a real hard time. No more so their former teammate Light Ray, aka Leah Nelson. She had fallen in battle when this story began, only to be resurrected by Mongul as some sort of terrifying zombie creature. In fact, friends turned enemies is a real problem for Superman's team here, as there's also the matter of Apollo, whose mind is currently being controlled by Teacher to attack his lover Midnighter. Now, back over with Superman, he's still in shock, having realized that one of the Philasians, basically his gladiatorial mentor, Kryl Ux, had betrayed him to Mongul. Why did Kryl betray the Man of Steel? Well, we don't actually know until the very end of the story, so let's put a pin in that and come back to it later. Just to really remind you what an evil jerk he is, the Mongul that is had kidnapped those two little Philasian children that Superman had been looking after. The boy ends up attacking Mongul, inspired and empowered by Superman's own victories. Of course, sadly, this kid isn't Superman, and because of that, Mongul ends up literally murdering a child. Holy crap. I did not expect that when I cracked this comic this morning. Naturally, Clark is livid about this and flies into a rage to battle Mongul one-on-one. Even though he's still physically depleted, and even though Mongul totally rang his bell when the Warworld Saga began, it's one of the most highly anticipated rematches in a long time. Now, because it's actually been a few issues, I honestly forgot what the good guy's actual plan was. It was to cause a big disturbance so Superman could get into the center of Warworld, but also so Natasha Irons and her Smith buddy could go to the Star Forge and turn the red sun energy that powers Warworld right now into a much more acceptable sort of solar energy that could not only empower Superman, but the Philasian slaves as well. To do all this, though, Natasha has to get past Teacher, one of Mongul's favorite champions, but she actually manages to do this in style too by making use of the Orphan, yet another one of Mongul's former champions, who, as it turned out, actually wasn't that evil at all, just thoroughly misunderstood. The Orphan is helping Superman and its friends so it can be reunited with its robot buddy, the Darling, aka the last piece of its homeworld. This plan actually ends up going off without a hitch too, and it's actually a surprisingly sweet moment in this big, crazy action finale. In fact, wouldn't you know it, this one victory actually starts a major domino effect wherein the good guys start winning decisively all over the planet. Manchester Black, using the power of illusion, helps Midnighter save Apollo from Mongul's mind control by creating an illusion wherein it looks like the Justice League attacks them all at once. For a second, I honestly thought it really was the Justice League coming in at the 11th hour to help Superman, because if you'll remember, the only reason the Justice League didn't come to help rescue the Philasians was because of a really contrived reason that I've forgotten by now. You'll also probably remember too that Mongul's big main goal this whole time was trying to get Ulgrim's fire for himself, so he too could become a god amongst gods. Superman decides to do the right thing and really get under Mongul's skin all in one fell swoop by using the magic dagger that the ghost of Ulgrim had given him in the previous issue to resurrect the child that Mongul had killed. And honestly, there's something so wonderfully quintessentially Superman about all of this. Yes, Superman had quested to try and get this godlike power. Yes, Ulgrim was basically the axis that the whole Warworld story spun on, but at the end of the day, none of that actually meant anything to Superman. Superman already had his godlike power. He knows how destructive it can be, and he knows that someone like Mongul should never be allowed to have it. All of this does indeed cause Mongul to freak the hell out. Again, since this story began, he has been characterized as Mr. Survival of the Fittest, so that Superman would sacrifice godlike power to save a child, well, it's just inconceivable to Mongul. Eventually, Natasha Irons does actually manage to get the brand new Star Forge online. Unfortunately, it's not without its own set of tragedies. Her friend the Smith is forced to go on into the Star Forge itself and sacrifice his own body to kickstart the whole thing. Not that he really sees it as a loss. As far as he's concerned, this is the most important thing he's ever done with his life, and also in a small way doing so helps him avenge his own people, who had long since been erased by the War Zoons, and with that, all of the different Philasians and Superman himself end up regaining their amazing powers. The battle is all but won, and you wonder, well, what is Superman gonna do with Mongul now? Well, he doesn't have to do anything because the Mongul who is actually murdered by Kryl Yux. It's only right here at the end does Kryl actually explain what the hell his deal is. You'll remember that there was a mysterious hooded individual who was feeding Mongul information. I had pretty much assumed that it was Byla-Esh, only here's the thing, there were actually two hooded individuals this whole time. One was Esh and one was Kryl. Turns out Kryl had always wanted the power of Ulgrim's fire for himself, A, to free the Phillasians, but B, also to punish all of his enemies. Kryl had been feeding the Mongul that was information about Earth, Genesis energy, and Superman in hopes that he would act in a way that Superman could no longer ignore what was going on in Warworld and come there, which is, well, exactly what he did. Kryl had gotten his way. The Phillasians will live and break their bonds of slavery, but he knows that Superman is too nice a guy to do the whole second part about punishing enemies. Kryl is, after all, not an unbloodied blade. He's not a bad guy, but he's certainly not a good guy either, and he ends up taking his leave. Though, where he goes is actually kind of interesting. We jump ahead an unknown amount of time later, wherein we're reintroduced to the President of the United Nations of Planets. You'll remember that this guy had been acting suspiciously all series long and actively went out of his way to try and impede Superman's progress. It's only here at the end, though, do we truly understand why. Turns out this guy actually kickstarted his political career in no small part by helping Mongul enslave the Phillasians. Kryl ends up sending this guy a very threatening message saying that Superman may have rescued the Phillasians, he may have freed Warworld, but a lot of the Warzoons aren't willing to go along with this more kinder, gentler, peaceful future. Those Warzoons have sworn fealty to Kryl, and now he says that he's going to be coming for the President of the United Nations of Planets. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, who knows, he just wants him to live in fear. Now, as the comic finally comes to a close, we see a lonely Lois sitting in her office only to be whisked away by Superman to fly like they did when they were first dating. Yes, that's right, everyone, the Man of Steel is back. He's picking up where he left off, and if you want to know more about his adventures, be sure to pick up the next installment of Action Comics. And so that was Superman Warworld Apocalypse issue number 1, everybody, and overall I thought it was a pretty solid conclusion to what ended up being a pretty damn solid Superman story. This was a real jam-packed book. I've talked for over 8 minutes and I was really only able to scratch the surface of everything that was going on here. Again, I forgot just how many different subplots that Phillip Kennedy Johnson was able to weave throughout Warworld Saga since it began. What worked about the Warworld Saga throughout is also true here in this finale. I love the idea that Superman wasn't even kind of tempted by the idea of more godlike power. He willingly gave it up, knowing that he trusted in his friends to do the right thing, and they did. I do feel like the Kryl revelation probably could have had a little bit more time to breathe. This was a series filled with great and interesting villains and mystery string pullers. The heel turn made sense, especially as we consider that this really has been a story about Superman being able to stick to his moral guns even in the worst, most challenging of times, so to have a Phillasian be so morally gray and compromised himself only makes sense. In fact, you know, Phillip Kennedy Johnson actually gives Kryl a pretty good status quo. I wonder if we're going to be seeing him again in the future. I know I would like to see that. Ultimately, too, now that it's all said and done, I think I can finally say with a certain level of authority, I think Warworld Saga is actually going to age really well once it's all collected. It's got all those great Superman hallmarks that you want wrapped up in a big epic feeling story. This is probably one of the best versions of Mongul we've gotten in maybe forever. Moving forward, there's also the promise too of what exactly this brand new DC universe is going to look like now that the Phillasians are free and now that Warworld is going to need a new leader. Overall, I feel comfortable giving this one a 9 out of 10. I think this one is definitely going to be on my best of list at the end of the year. Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.